Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you very much for joining me here today. This is your one-stop shop for cryptocurrency analysis, among many other things. Now we're taking a look here today at Dent Wireless, which is a community favorite. So thank you to my community for asking that I cover this. It's actually a Patreon member that I wanted to make sure to make this video for. So thanks again for all of your support, Pete. I really appreciate you. Moving forward here, of course, I'm not a financial advisor. This is for educational purposes only. You should do your own research at all times and take ownership of your trades. If you need help with that, perhaps everything you're going to learn here today, I utilize in my own Signal group that I share with my community members, my patrons. And what I do is I essentially provide all of my trades plus best practice, of course, in that, so that way you can kind of follow along and do what I do. I have about an 80 to 85% success rate overall with my trades. Just constantly making profit, whether or not it's 0.5% or 20%. It does happen. It's kind of there's a range, of course, but regardless, I share that with my members. Check that out in your own time. Also reference my Telegram community. There's no cost for that. That is just a free group that I have as well to ensure that we all continue to learn and grow together. Because my goal is to make you a better trader so you can trade for a lifetime, not just for one day, right? So that's the whole purpose here. I like to, create positive, awesome traders instead of, sad, unfortunate, doom and gloom traders, because the fact that you cannot be unhappy when you trade. Okay. Now you might see that I'm typically happy. Well, I think that disposition fares well. So, if you're just kind of an unhappy person or you're having a bad day, consider trading on a better day, right? Just a little advice. Regardless, I'm not here to preach, but you will hear me ramble on from time to time. So thank you for listening, and we'll be just go ahead and jump right to the video. Let's go ahead and take a look at the charts. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look here at Dent. And just before we do, we always look at Ethereum and Bitcoin first to get a baseline of the market so we know exactly what's going on with the two largest coins in the industry, because obviously most things are relying on Bitcoin, and we need to understand why we're seeing the price action we're seeing here today. Okay, so that's kind of the point of that. Because some people ask me, well, what's the point? Honestly, it's imperative. You must look at Bitcoin before you look at any other coin, period. I like Ethereum as well, just because there's a lot of things in the ERC20 blockchain. It makes sense to do that too. But when it comes to Dent, we'll go ahead and take a look here, of course, at Bitcoin, Ethereum first. Just to preface as well, we do utilize TradingView. At least that's what I use all the time, day in and day out. It's my favorite charting tool, so I recommend you probably consider getting on board. The paid version is much better than the non-paid version, so I do recommend that. I have a link in the description below for like a free month to kind of get the feel for it. If you discover you like it, you can continue on. But definitely worth every penny just based on how good the charting tools are. And what I use within this here is basically simple moving averages, right? So for the 4-hour chart or higher, I like to use the SMA lines. The SMA 50 and 200 are the most commonly used, so that's what we need to use well, because the fact that if the industry leaders, all the whales and the bots, everything is kind of controlling the market, if they're using these, we need to get on board with that, right? That's the whole purpose and idea there. So the 200 and the 50 is what they use commonly. The orange line here is the 50 and the 200 is the purple, basically just telling us they are currently working at support levels. When the price is above, they're considered support. We may see the 50 get tested soon, depending on how much sideways action we see here at 46,000. But for the moment, we're just kind of hovering at 46.3. We've got a major support at 42,500 and another major support at 45,000 even. I would even speculate at this point, even though it's a little early, 46,000 is also another support level. Big picture though, just so you know, we've got a major resistance at about 51,000. So if you look at the price here from before, you can kind of see that there's not a lot of support and resistance zones in between 45,000 and 51,000. So it's kind of open season here. And what's nice is, Bitcoin just broke out of this, this ascending, or sorry, continuation bull flag pattern, and we can see that here where it just kind of continued on and then broke out eventually. Not as soon as we'd hoped, but it definitely still did. So we're at about 46,000 plus right now. So all in all, pretty good shape for Bitcoin. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to Ethereum. And I just pretty much want to just say rinse and repeat. Same situation applied to Ethereum. We've got us, support levels at about 2,400 and again 2,900. This was previously tested about 10 times in the past, and finally recently just broke right through and stayed up. So it held really well. You can see it was obviously working as a support, and it's been tested 2 or 3 times and holding above as well. The only thing else to note here is that we don't have as much range for as Bitcoin does without another major resistance level. So roughly 3,600 is going to be another major resistance level. or zone essentially for Ethereum. So we've got this zone of about 2,900 to 36. We're about halfway through that. Okay, so just keep in mind we might start seeing some resistance at about 35, 3,600. All right, moving on to Dent. Let's go ahead and take a look at the one-day chart first and make sure we understand specifically what's going on here. And before we do, let's go ahead and identify its average true range first. And what I mean by that is, where did it spend its most of its time here recently before Bitcoin sold off, right? Because we want to kind of take a correlation of how much, the value of Bitcoin and the value of Dent and kind of see where that compares. And right back here, if we look, just say in the the March to April zone, Bitcoin was at its all-time high, excuse me, between 50 and 64,000. Now, April 17th, Bitcoin took a dump, right? 15% or more in one day. So if we look here, obviously, Dent was responding to that as well. So we see this major decrease there, major retracement. Then on the 25th, as per usual, most altcoins jumped up. A lot of altcoins went and did one of these, whereas Dent didn't. So that tells me just the fact that it's fairly reliant on Bitcoin's success. In other words, again, back here, April 5th, that was like one of the best days for Bitcoin. Like this, April 5th, yeah, Bitcoin was at 59,000 approximately, right? So just keep that in mind. In order for Dent to get back up to just say the range of, because this is its average true range before April 17th, it spent the most time between about 1 cent and about 1.5 cents. So in order for it to get to 1 to 1.5 cents, we're going to need to see Bitcoin continue to progress past 50,000, okay? Preferably closer to 60. We don't know that yet, but if Bitcoin gets closer to 60,000, then yes, Dent will open up and come right back to that range there. So if you got positions somewhere in the range of 1 cent or higher, you're going to have to do a little bit of waiting. It's not going to get there right away, but it's good news that we did see a strong pump here today, okay? And what we've seen so far in just this trading day alone, it still hasn't closed yet, is a range of about 40%. That's a lot more than we've seen in the past. I mean, you're talking like, it took 5 or 6, maybe even 7 days right after Bitcoin surpassed 30,000, from being sub 30,000 to see that kind of range, whereas we sell it one day here. So let's count our blessings, so to speak, and just be thankful that we have this kind of price action. But just bear in mind, on the one-day chart, the 200-day simple moving average is potentially going to be a resistance level, right? We're in between the 50 and the 200, which is fine. As you can see, the 50 worked as a pretty strong support. We're up over the previous resistance at 0.0027, whereas we're going to be trying to progress up to about 0.0048. That is where the 200 is currently at right now, right? So if this continues on, just say Dent keeps on moving up, which it is very likely that it could continue to happen based on the simple fact that it doesn't have any major, actually, let's see if we can identify any major resistance zones. So there's potential resistance. Again, that's right where the 200 is, right at about 0.0048. There's a slight support here, which is where the price is at right now. So let's just go ahead and let's mark this guy here. And that's what, 0.004416. So generally speaking, this is a potential support level because that was a resistance zone from before, but I would be willing to guess that we're going to see a potential retracement of 50%. Again, this is just speculation. Generally speaking, most coins, when they increase by 100%, they're going to decrease by 50% by the end of that trading day based on the fact of the natural law of retracement, just kind of how things do that. You can see it on the Fibonacci retracement tool. It's kind of splitting the difference. Usually it's like a 60-40. But when it comes to this here with with Dent, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a retracement there. But again, we want to look at other factors too to see where we're at too, because there's a good chance Dent could just continue to keep ramping up. But we do have a resistance zone here. I would venture to guess the price might start to channel itself in between here. Again, just kind of throwing some figures up here loosely. This is just basically 50% of the difference of where it started and where it's at now. And you can probably see a similar correlation with the Fibonacci retracement. You see it's just below one of these zones here for Fibonacci. And I prefer to take entry just before or just above the Fibonacci retracement lines because of the fact that they have a tendency of being very hard lines for the industry leaders. And if you can get in just before or get in just after, sell just after, there's a lot of benefits of not using the Fibonacci retracement tool to a T. Okay, so just something to note. I can elaborate on that later, but RSI is up over what, 80? So obviously a little bit on the overextended side, especially on the 1-day chart. We've had what, how many? Yeah, see, we're on 7 days of continuation here, according to the TD Sequential. So we could have potential 2 more days of continuation before we reach exhaustion. But I can tell you right now, just looking at the the RSI being up over 80, closer to 85 on the 1-day chart, there's a strong chance it won't stay that high for much longer. In other words, it'll probably come back down. In other words, it may just go sideways for some time, might stay above the support here of 0.00417, or it may also retrace down to 0.0039. Okay, so just some things to consider. Doesn't mean we're set in stone there. I just want to let you know that. So looking at the 4-hour chart, we'll go ahead and move on to the RSI. Now RSI, same scenario, same story. It is kind of starting to kind of come back down, which is good. Any good bull run, we need to have it come down, and I like this pattern here so far. We kind of got an up over. So hypothetically, if we can get some continuation of this consolidation for just say 2 or 3 more days, then we will likely see another increase from Dent. There's a chance too, it could just keep on going up, right? Sometimes you never truly know how fast these things can continue, because if we look at this here, we've got tons of volume in the last 24, 48 hours, more so in the last 12, and that's definitely showing that we are in much better shape than before. Okay, so now that Bitcoin is kind of stabilizing and consistently increasing, a lot of altcoins are doing this right now. They're basically kind of joining in the race where people like you and I are having more, or less fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and more confidence and willing to invest in these altcoins that kind of screwed us over earlier in a few months ago, right? So for lack of better terms, people are a little more cavalier and they're ready to invest, and that's just, you're going to see that constantly right now in the industry. So August 10th, which is obviously yesterday at 1700, so 5 p.m. Let's go ahead and mark that here. I like to mark this because I want to see if there's a correlation between this and the Ichimoku Cloud on the 1 hour. Because commonly when you have a convergence on the MACD on the 4-hour chart, it's a buy signal, of course, to go long. Okay, and that's usually for swing trading more instinctively. But generally speaking, you wanted to have taken entry in this 4-hour time frame. That would have been a good consideration for entry. Obviously, it's easy to say now because it ramped up highly after that. But generally speaking, when you see this MACD kind of swinging upwards, as soon as if you can catch the 12 intersecting with the 26, which is the blue coming up to the orange, then you're in really good shape there. That's usually a good consideration for a long position. And oftentimes I'll set indicators and notifications based on that. And when I get an alert, I'll just commonly take entry for a long position, especially if Bitcoin's bullish. You're pretty much almost guaranteed a profit. You just want to set a stop loss to make sure you protect your profits and ensure that you meet what you need to meet for those for your own risk tolerance. Okay, we all have different rules, but it's important to have kind of a good risk tolerance in crypto. Moving forward, let's go ahead and take a look at the 1-hour chart and see if we can identify the Ichimoku Cloud and just kind of if there's a correlation here. Big surprise, Dent has been on a bull run here recently over the last 5 days considering. So it's actually been up over the cloud the entire time. So if you're new to the channel or just cryptocurrency in general, more importantly, Ichimoku Cloud, then you need to know that when the price is above the cloud, it's considered a buy signal. So this would have been a perfect buy signal here. Of course, hindsight's 20/20, but that's exactly where you might have wanted to take entry. And of course, when it drops below, it's considered a short position. Would have been dumb to short in this market right now, but that would have been a consideration for a short signal, right? So just kind of throwing it out there. Price is above, it's bullish. Price is below, it's bearish. I guess that's a good way to put it. And as you can see here, it's working as a support level too. So when it comes down, it bounces off the actual cloud, and then it bounces off the cloud here as well, right? So it's consistently working as a support. But the bottom line here is that recent MACD on the 4-hour chart that basically signaled a convergence, told us that we are above the cloud and we're in really good shape. So you look at the 4-hour chart, okay, I got a convergence coming up. Let's check the Ichimoku Cloud on the 1 hour. You look at the 1 hour here, okay, we're still above the cloud, we're good to go, all set. Because the rule is that if you're in the cloud, you don't invest. If it's below, you consider shorting. It's above, it's stayed above, and it's been above for the last 5 days. So the bulls are in control, and that's a really, really good, a good consideration for a long position. Okay, so we've got some awesome indicators here that are basically helping us understand more specifically that Dent is on a bull run right now. Yes, it increased significantly and it might retrace some, but I think it's a strong consideration for the fact that Dent is here to play and it may likely continue on, upwards here in the very near future. Oh, you know what? Let's go ahead and take a look at TD Sequential. So I'd like to note this here too, because TD Sequential is something that is very underrated or underused, but there's a really large community based on it. Well, my community, of course, through my Telegram, and I utilize this also too in my my signal groups because I do send out signals, every single week, usually a few times per week when I take entry. Every trade that I take, I share with my community, right? But what I do is I basically utilize TD Sequential in that. And on the 1 hour chart, I've noticed it's the most consistent. It works on the 4 hour and the 1 day as well. But what it does, it tells us when there's market exhaustion. So it's basically counting up from 1 to 9. That's as rudimentary as you can get. There's a lot of nuances here I don't want to worry, concern you with. But generally speaking, when you see a 9, as we see here, that means that we reached a state of exhaustion. Commonly, the RSI is well over 70 when you see this, which makes sense, and it is. So, you're like, okay, RSI is over 70. Okay, maybe consider selling or maybe trimming. When you see the TD sequential up, past 9, you're in overtime. So right now we're in overtime. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see somewhat of a retracement. As we can see, there's a 1 right here. I don't know if you can see that very well, but there is a 1 basically telling us that we have a potential of 8 more hours of bearish sentiment. Okay, now there's no guarantees on this, but it's usually very likely when something comes up, it comes down, right? So we might see 8 more hours of continuation down to that 50% mark that I've marked here. So I'd be willing to guess 2 things will happen. The price will come down, it'll continue to go sideways and bounce off of 0.00417, which is a previous support level, or sorry, previous resistance, now a support. And then if it passes that, we at least have the secondary support of that 50% line, that Fibonacci retracement line, so to speak, just at 0.038. Sorry, 0.0038. Okay, so good news is we got some kind of support here. So I'd recommend if you have an open position and you're just holding for a short amount of time, you consider putting a stop loss just under either of these 2 support levels. And just know that there's a strong chance that the price has to go sideways in order for it to go up again, right? Because otherwise it's going to be too exhausted and the bears are going to be ready to play. We want to have this constant back and forth, but that consistency and consolidation is extremely important. So remember, I identified that we're actually looking at a decent bull run right now. Okay, so it's kind of doing this up over pattern, but this went up way too high. So I think there's a strong variance. In other words, there's a standard deviation lines that you can't see here that I use in the View App tool that is probably over exaggerated right now. So it has to calm down. So what I'm getting at to try to make it simple is we should expect to see at least 8 hours of consolidation, perhaps even some retracement before we see another pump. At least I would like to see that, because otherwise it'll die off early and we'll start seeing significant retracement. And we don't need to have that. We want to see some sideways action. So if all goes well, we just stay above the support and it goes sideways, and then it does one of these, just kind of continues on up, right? Again, it could come down here, or it could do one of these, right? We don't truly know. But generally, based on the numbers here, this is a good bull run, and in order for it to remain good, we need to make sure that it has some more consolidation. So I like the fact that it's going sideways right now before it goes up. So it needs to calm down. The RSI needs to kind of chill out, so to speak, because you look at the 4 hour chart, RSI is still overextended. If the RSI can get back down to 70 before it pumps again, then we're going to be in really good shape. Okay. Looking at the 15-minute chart, we're looking at the EMA and View App. And this guy here basically just tells us a lot about what's going on. So if you are new to the channel, I like to try to explain this. Apologies if you heard this a million times. Thank you if you have, of course, because that means you've been consistent in watching. Appreciate that. But what I want to say here is that I've got 2 lines, right? This blue line here is the View App. That's a volume weighted average price. It takes the volume the last 24 hours, expresses it as a price. And so right now, the price should be, according to the volume, 0.004. Right now, the price is at 0.0043. So that's a standard deviation of approximately 6%. That's not bad. It was heightened, honestly, before. If you see this here, it was upwards of 13% right there. So that's why it retraced back down. It came too far away from the volume, right? Because volume is a very underutilized metric. And the View app kind of helps, kind of communicate that more effectively. It only works on shorter time frames, so don't throw it on a 1 hour chart or higher. 15 minutes or lower is all it works on, because it's more of a day trading tool, but it really helps us understand if it's a support and resistance level. Right now it's been a consistent support because the bulls are in control. Furthermore, we've got the EMA line. That's this red line here. I use the EMA 15. Default is 9 and 20. I just do away with that completely. I like the 15 because it's kind of splitting the difference. I don't have a lot of noise on my chart, right? I like to have 2 indicators present above and beyond the RSI and MACD on every chart, so that way I can always identify quickly what's going on without all this extra crap. I mean, because like literally, some people have charts like this, and it just gets crazy nonsense, right? You don't need all that stuff. Yes, they serve their purpose at certain times, but every time frame has its beneficial indicators. Utilize them correctly. That being said, the EMA is very nice because it tells us when the bulls are in control or the bears are in control, right? Because if the price is below the red line, it's going to be considered bearish. So obviously the bulls are in complete control here. But furthermore, I have this again. I share this with my patrons. The EMA and View app notification tool is good because what it does, it helps you identify quickly with these little yellow up arrows, telling you that we have 30 minutes of confirmation. Okay, so let's see here. So when it comes to 30 minutes of confirmation, what I mean by that is we've got one green bar that closed above EMA and View app, and 2 green bars closing above EMA and View app. So what that's doing is telling us that the bulls are in control because the price is over EMA. The View app is telling us we have a support level. The price is above support. Check number 2. Check number 3, icing on the cake, above and beyond everything else we've already looked at, is notifying us, telling us that, hey, we've got 30 minutes of confirmation. So the bulls have had control of the market for the last 30 minutes. What's the likelihood of them continuing that momentum? It's very high considering the fact that we're above EMA and View app. Okay, so this would have been a good consideration for entry. So had I just said enabled this notification, it would have told me to take entry at that point, and I would be up about 29% right now. Okay, so that's how simple it is. Again, if you're not utilizing too much complexities. There's a lot of little things, of course, you need to know and understand and learn, which is why we look at the one-day chart, work our way down, because every chart speaks its own language. But the key here is that we look at Bitcoin first, understand its average true range, and understand that also we have tons of momentum and movement here. Okay, so I think Dent is going to stick around. I don't think it's a good shorting position. I get that question right now a lot, just based on the fact that it's common for Dent to sell off pretty hard. It's actually had a history of doing that. But I can tell you that right now, based on what I see here so far, this is a strong bull run. It should likely continue, but we're probably going to expect to see some, a small amount of retracement to at least one of these 2 lines here, and or a continuation. It might even just keep going up right now. So I would say to pay close attention to Dent right now. If it comes back down and bounces off of 0.00417, then it would be a strong consideration to maybe add to your position. Again, if you're just planning to to swing trade, which a lot of Dent holders are doing, then I think it's good to either add to your position or continue on, because again, we saw this before. Bitcoin was at 50, what was it, 50, was it 52, 54,000 when Dent was in its average true range, right? So Dent was averaging somewhere in the range of what, basically 1 cent to 0.15, right? Or sorry, 1.5, I'm misspeaking there, but basically 1 to 1.5 cents when Bitcoin was in 50 to 60,000 range. Well, Bitcoin's at 46,000 right now, and Dent is only at 0.004. So what potential do we have for Dent to increase in the near future to 1 cent? I think it's pretty likely. Again, if Bitcoin can get upwards of 50,000, I think it's almost a guarantee that Dent will try to test its previous support and resistance levels. So we'll probably see 0.0061. I'll mark those for you really quick. 0.006, we'll just say 0.006. And then, of course, if it passes that line, we've got a pretty major 0.0073. I'll just mark these for future analysis. I mean, obviously, we're not out of the woods yet. Don't get me wrong. It's not just going to blast to 1 cent. But, pending the fact that we have these pretty decent and realistic resistance levels here, I think it could shoot very well to 1 cent. So I would say in the next couple of weeks, we'll probably see Dent testing 0.007. But again, it's hard to say. It really just depends on Bitcoin's performance. Bitcoin might, test 45,000, come below, drop into between that channel of 42.5 and 45,000. If it does, then we'll see Dent kind of press pause for a moment, because Dent only pumps when Bitcoin is doing well. Please understand that. When we see back here, April 25th, Bitcoin did very well right here. Unfortunately, it retraced back down. So, one last thing I want to identify. People ask me, is Dent going to be back to 1 cent? Dent to 1 cent? I would say yes, but it matters what Bitcoin's doing. If Bitcoin can get closer to 60,000, and for sure, yeah, easy meal ticket there. But if Bitcoin doesn't hit 50,000 in the near future, then we might see Dent kind of slowly trail off. So if you found benefit from this, please consider subscribing. I appreciate you sticking around this long, of course, if you have. Hopefully, we'll see you in the community. Check out my Telegram, of course, and feel free to support me on Patreon if you'd like to follow me and utilize my swing trading. In other words, I actually have a signal group that I provide to my community members, and what we do is I just share every one of my trades. I have about an 80 to 85% success rate right now. So if you are struggling with good entry points, it might be helpful to help you with best practice, and that's just something to consider looking into. But either way, if I don't see you there, if I see you whenever, great. Thanks again for joining me here. We'll hope you have a great rest of your day. Appreciate your time. We'll see you.